I want to thank the organizers. I want to thank the UN, United Nations. I want to thank George Mason and Jenry and all the other participants and organizers. Really appreciate that. I had a little bit of a short notice on this, so my presentation is going to move very fast. I focus on and I appreciate the invite. Obviously, I'm going to focus on the content. The aesthetics aren't really amazing, but we want to talk about Africa and how to win and empower economically and environmentally. So as I said, the presentation will move very fast, a lot of ground to cover, many interrelated points. It's basically focusing on how to get private investors and venture capital interested in this and how to sort of combine and win, obviously, as we said, economically and environmentally. It's going to be very candid, honest, focused on the data and what works, not politics. And we're going to see how public and private sectors can work together. So let's talk about the environmental challenges. Obviously, water is a huge, important subject. A vast majority of the countries are at risk right now for water or environmentally are in Africa. And over 1/3 of disease is caused by environmental issues. So about 1/3, 30% of Africans don't have enough water. And the problem is even more dire in sub-Saharan Africa. So less than 25% have clean water. Close to 50% of Rwandans have no drinking water. And water obviously is critical for life, but it also is a renewable energy resource. Another problem is energy. So almost half of all Africans don't have electricity. And the energy needs in Africa are increasing rapidly because you have massive population expansion and as well as economic growth. So most energy in Africa right now is not clean, and that obviously has negative environmental impact. So there is an interesting temporary opportunity here. And the technology and economic growth are empowering, but they also can have negative side effects for the environment. So, technology is, it can be bad, it can be good. It is, like I said, it is empowering. It just depends on how you use it. And obviously it depends on some of the side effects. But I believe that technology and productivity will also solve the problems that technology and growth has gotten us into. So for example, recent growth in Africa has led to actually less pollution because now that there's other economic opportunities, there's less farmers that are burning fields to clear for the next year's crop and planting. So that actually has reduced temporarily pollution. That gives us a window here to take action. And also remote work, right? That's led to less commuting. That's led to obviously less pollution, less CO2. Maybe it's a temporary effect, maybe it's a longer term effect, but these are windows that allow us to take action right now and hopefully seize this opportunity. So let's make some important distinctions and clarifications. Private investors have their own investment criteria. That's different than perhaps the criteria or motivation of a government or an NGO or a charity. So, when you talk to private investors and you try to work with them, you have to understand their mindset. So even important environmental need by itself, that's not an investment thesis for a private investor. Obviously, it can create an investment opportunity. So for example, a need for solar plus bad investment opportunities or too much risk, that's probably not investable for our private investors. On the other hand, need for electric cars, great car company, great team, great market, that could be investable. So if you want to increase private investment, that's a different approach, as we said. The bottom line is when you talk to private investors, understand it's a different conversation and understand what they need to get interested in your project and then how you can work together. So there's been some problems investing in clean tech, right? I mean, investors got burned really bad in clean tech 1.0. And about half the investments failed. There was a loss of well over $10 billion. For instance, the solar panel prices dropped precipitously over about 10 years. Now that may be great in the end for technology and clean tech and consumers, but if you were an investor in a solar panel company, you got crushed. And that's just one example. I think doing my research that clean tech might look a little bit more like biotech and pharma. These are long development cycles. These are big bets. There's a lot of risk, and your entire business model can be shifted by something that you didn't anticipate 5 years back. So I think if we look at, for example, the automotive sector, something I'm very familiar with, I'm sort of an expert in that space. 10 years ago, when you were talking about clean tech 1.0, there was all kinds of different talks of which fuel system was going to win out. Was it going to be hydrogen? Was it going to be natural gas? Was it clean diesel? Was it electric? Was it hybrids? Each one of these systems demanded a massive spend in infrastructure. You had to have service centers, you had to have fuel centers, you had to have the manufacturers building all these technologies. So any of those bets, if you were wrong, you lost massive amounts of money. So that's a real, something we need to be present of in terms of our mental thought process when we engage with private investors. Now, that doesn't mean that clean tech isn't working in automotive. It absolutely is, in my opinion. But again, if you're making these investments as a private investor, losing $2, $3, $5, $10 billion for a private company or an investor group is a much different number than, let's say, a government where a program doesn't work out. So here's some opportunities investing in clean tech. Clean Tech 2.0 is getting major traction right now. There's better technologies, better cost structures, more experience in the space for everyone, huge potential markets, and there's massive global momentum in the space. However, caution, Clean Tech 2.0 stocks are really outperforming even the NASDAQ by about a 3x. So that raises questions. Is there a bubble? If the bubble bursts and investors get burned, is that going to hurt future investment like we saw with Clean Tech 1.0? Is that sustainable? And what should investors think about that? Let's talk about a case study of where public and private investment has worked really well. Dubai, massively successful at attracting foreign investment, building smart infrastructure, and it's one of the richest cities in the world per capita. The growth is up a lot. Private foreign investment is up even during the pandemic. Why? Well, they've got pro-investor policies. They've got foreign investors that can have total ownership. That's a new change recently in the UAE. That's a big deal. Simple, quick, easy visa policy. This is an elite level of investor-friendly economic trade zones, including at the port. That's a big deal right there. So, they're really focused on trade. Diverse workforce, diverse language skills and accessibility, fantastic infrastructure. The government encourages tourism and investment. And I think that's a really important point too. When investors and populations are able to go and visit your country, there becomes a familiarity. There becomes a comfortability with interacting and understanding I understand how this works. And yes, I would make an investment there. Government is also forward thinking there. They take a lot of risks. They're willing to try different things and they lead heavy on leading edge tech. So things like self-driving cars, 5Gs, Hyperloop, IoT, drones, those are all deployed now or being studied to be deployed. So Israel, we also see, which, both these countries obviously are very close in proximity to Africa. That's one of the reasons I chose those. Is also been very, very successful. It's a top country in the world per capita for unicorn creation, very high GDP, even with few natural resources and a small landmass. Extremely entrepreneurial ecosystem. They attract a lot of VC investment. Why? I think you see very, very much the same type of policies in Israel as in Dubai, with a little bit of a different nuance there. Pro-investors, they've got an entire government agency and campaign directed just to doing this, which is the IPA. They send foreign delegations. They just had a foreign delegation over here not too long ago in Miami. I'm in South Florida right now. To promote investment. Strong education entrepreneurial ecosystem. Tel Aviv University is one of the top, it's really the top university in the world for VC investment outside the US and one of the top in the world. Technion, also their military. So their military has it's a tremendous training base for cybersecurity and defense tech. And again, you see a lot of the same things in Dubai. 100% ownership is possible for foreign investors in Israel. Easy visa policy, diverse workforce, diverse language skills and accessibility, great infrastructure, and a lot of their leading edge tech there is cybersecurity, software, artificial intelligence, and machine learning and digital health. Another case study which is interesting is Aruba. Aruba is a small Caribbean island, and they've been massively successful, but they didn't have access to fresh water. They built one of the world's top desalination plants. And this was before, from what I've been able to see, they had, a lot of huge influx of tourism and a lot of money. And they've continued to improve on that. And now it generates massive amounts of visitors. Almost all the water supplied in Aruba is dealt with that plant. And it doesn't take much. The technology is known. It doesn't take much to be able to deploy that. This is something that I think Africa can do right now. But what it comes down to is the country, in each of these cases, Israel, Dubai, Aruba, the country and the government made a decision that we're going to do this. We are going to engage with foreign investors. We're going to lean on technology. We're going to use technology to solve environmental and investment problems in our countries. And I think that's what Africa should do. So what do investors want? Investors do a risk reward calculation. How to increase reward? You look at things like new growing markets, moonshot tech, massively added value, productivity gains and general cost reductions. So, and there is that debate within clean tech, and I understand both sides of it. Do you go for that super moonshot disruptive technology, or do you look for, as we say in baseball, to use a baseball analogy, just to get on base, look for singles and doubles and just incremental but positive, easier wins? I like both, right? I think you take a win when you can get it, you try to reduce the risk, but then how do you reduce risk? Security. Do you have good security in your company, in your country? Can investors go there? Can travelers go there? And do you have banking security? Do you have physical security? All that goes on with security. Do you have good liquidity? Can I get my money in, get my money out? Can I if I invest in this deal, what's the length of time that it's going to be illiquid? Is it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Do you have strong markets, better teams, diligence, communication, being able to engage with investors, having a transparent process, no crony capitalism, no corruption. And in fact, we see a new study here that a strong ethical legal system and environmental sustainability. So the better you have your legal system that's reliable, the more environmental sustainability that you have. And of course, the normal stuff of reducing political, military, and crime risk. What do governments want? Well, they want to make sure constituents have their basic needs met. Water, food, shelter. They want jobs for constituents. They want environmental sustainability. They want a growing economy. They want strong local infrastructure. They usually want local control. Advantages for Africa. Africa has a lot of advantages. This is by no means is all of them, but it's just a quick survey. Huge land mass with a majority of the world's farmland. One of the other speakers already talked about that. They have a huge young workforce. Almost half of all new workers globally are going to be coming from Africa. That's a big advantage. You already have environmental wins in Africa. Almost all Ethiopia's electric power is sustainable. The biggest solar project in the world is in Morocco. They have a massive new free trade zone. I know this is the countries are working on adopting this. If it's adopted, that would be huge. And they have a large amount of natural resources, gold, platinum, a lot of minerals, and many other things. Possible solutions, and this is just really brainstorming, by no means definitive or heavily studied. Maybe regional investments in infrastructure. Maybe governments can provide better infrastructure, tax-free and trade zones. 100% foreign ownership options. I think that's important. Special incentives for critical environmental tech focused on clean water, sustainable energy, broadband internet access. Investors and companies provide jobs, economic development, net zero or better, abating tech for environmental impact, internships, training opportunities, possible future. I mean, there's all kinds. This would be a whole nother subject, a long discussion, but there's all kinds of different structures that governments can look at that can allow for exits for investors, potentially possible ownership or taking over by the governments or local citizens. You see models like in Saudi Arabia with the Aramco, and there's many others. Small, or maybe a small profit share, dividend opportunity for locality. So I think we have to look at ways where there's a win-win both for foreign investors and for the local government and for the local populations. It has to be a good partnership, and both sides have to win, and of course the environment has to win. That's the bottom line. So here's some more, a couple quick ideas. Public and private partnerships. Look for unique and innovative structures. We talked about that in the win-win. Strong marketing and outreach for private investors in tourism. I think we covered that a little bit, but I think that's very important because more tourists mean more local dollars, more comfortability, more familiarity for investors. Look for ways to collaborate regionally and globally. I think a lot of these solutions will lend itself to regional partnerships. And again, this is just a few starting ideas. Happy to continue this work. I definitely appreciate Bushra reaching out to me, so feel free to contact me to continue the discussion. I really appreciate the time to make this presentation. Thank you very much. And further slides have my references, etc.